Hello families, thank you for joining us for Post-Secondary Testing Information Night. Just to start off by introducing the counselors here at the Susquehanna High School Counseling Department. My name is Matthew Shervington. I am the school counselor for students whose last names start with the letters L through R.
Hi, I'm Courtney Coons. I am the counselor for students with last names starting S through Z.
I'm Erin O'Connor Rudman, students last name E through K.
And I'm Kate Nicholas. I have students with the last names A through D.
And so tonight we will just be providing a presentation that overviews many of the different testing options available for students to help them on their post-secondary journey, including advanced placement exams, the SAT, the ACT, and the ASVAB exam. That said, I will pass it on to Ms. Nicholas.
Not only am I the counselor for students with the last names A through D, but I'm also the AP coordinator. So if you have any students that are currently in AP classes for this school year, you've probably gotten emails from me. And if your student is taking AP exams next year, get used to seeing my name because you'll get emails from me. So AP exams are an opportunity for students essentially to earn college credit. Now we'll send this out digitally, so this link you'll actually be able to click on. Mr. Shervington, do you mind just clicking on it to show them where it takes them? So this is a really great tool. Oftentimes, students will wonder, like, is my AP US History score going to get me college credit at whatever college? This is a way that you can search by exam, and it will show you different colleges and what score you would need to achieve and what it would count as at that school when you actually go in a little bit more specifically. So this is super helpful. So just make sure that we will send out in our newsletter the actual document, and we'll also paste it on or post it on our website, so then you can access the link and then maybe bookmark that or something, if that pertains to you. Currently, we have 17 AP courses that are taught here at the high school. With each course, a student gets access to AP Classroom, which a lot of the teachers use to help supplement their lessons. There's practice exams in there. Students have access to get free online resources that help prepare them for the exam in addition to what they are learning in the classroom. If you have students in AP exams this year, the final payment is due April 25th. Invoices were recently just posted in My School Bucks. You can pay with a credit card through that way. If you don't care for My School Bucks, you can pay using cash or check and have that dropped off in the counseling office. A check will be made onto SHS, just SHS. Testing will take place in May. There was a purple handout over there, so if your student is doing testing this year, those are all the regular testing dates. There's either 8 a.m. exams or 12 p.m. exams, and those dates are set in stone. Yes?
So everything on this purple sheet is something offered here?
No.
Okay.
Only 17 of those are offered here. Now,
Okay, I was going to say I didn't know that Japanese. Okay.
yes, but we've had somebody take AP Chinese. Yeah.
Okay.
So a student is always welcome to take any exam, but it's advisable that you do some sort of self-study, or if you have some outside program that you're doing, you can take the test here. It just has to be ordered during the normal ordering deadlines. So for next year, we're adding in an 18th AP course. It is called AP Seminar. This is a foundational course that helps students engage in cross-curricular conversations. They look at real-world topics, they'll work in groups and individually to complete research, think critically, and engage in meaningful dialogue. They'll look at topics through a variety of lenses and through multiple perspectives. It's assessed through a team project, an individual research essay, and a presentation, and then the end of course exam, which takes place in May, would be worth 45% of the score. So this is set up a little bit differently than the other AP courses that our students are used to. So AP Seminar is step one of a two-part, I guess you could say, program, resulting in something called AP Capstone. AP Seminar, if students take that next year, if they are a junior, we will be introducing, or we plan to introduce AP Research in the following school year. So as a senior, they can then take AP Research. If that student takes 4 AP exams in their time here and earns a score of 3 or higher on those 4 exams, plus gets a 3 or higher in AP Seminar and a 3 or higher in AP Research, they are considered an AP Capstone recipient. They will get an AP Capstone diploma. This looks really, really good on college applications. It can really boost their application for a college. Now, if you have a senior for next year, and they would only be eligible to take AP Seminar, because they wouldn't be here for AP Research, they can get an AP Research certificate saying that they achieved that 3 or higher, which again is also, an accolade that they can add to their resume for their college applications.
All right, so we're going to dive into the SAT and ACT. I want to start with recognizing that the SAT and ACT are both tests used for admissions, and they are both accepted by all post-secondary institutions. Back in the day, some schools would prefer one over the other, so a lot of times students come in with that kind of knowledge because maybe when their parent applied to school, that was the case. At this point, schools will accept either if they're looking to accept exams. So then, after hearing that information, the next question we get from students is, well, what's the difference? So we're going to go through each exam in detail and then kind of highlight those differences for you. The next question we get after we go through the differences is, well, when should I take them? So we typically recommend that students take the SAT or ACT for the first time the spring of their junior year. I have included the spring 2022 test dates up here for both the SAT and ACT. And I want to highlight the 2 test dates that have the asterisks on them. So the March 12th SAT and the April 2nd ACT. Both of these tests will be offered here at Susquehannock High School. So Susquehannock High School serves as a test center on Saturday test dates for the SAT and ACT. We host one fall day and one spring day each year. So this is a great opportunity for our students to kind of have home field advantage in a sense. A lot of times students say they just feel a little bit more comfortable coming to our school. They know what the classrooms look like, they know where the bathroom is, little things like that that can kind of take off some anxiety over coming to take this test. I also included the registration deadlines, so just important to meet those deadlines, not miss registration or pay extra late fees, and registration does take place online through the respective organization. So the SAT is administered by the College Board. It is a 3-hour reasoning-based test. It is currently $55, although fee waivers are available for students who receive free or reduced lunch. So I will mention this a couple times, just the importance that if your student does receive free or reduced lunch, to please have them reach out to their school counselor because we can offer fee waivers. The SAT has 2 main tests. It's the evidence-based reading and writing, which encompasses the reading, writing, and language, and then the math section, which currently there's a with the calculator and without calculator section. These 2 tests are scored between 200 and 800, and so 1600 would be kind of the highest score a student could achieve between those 2. An important update from fall 2021 was that College Board got rid of the essay section. So there used to be an essay portion that was also scored in there that is no longer available to students. So they do not have to stay an extra hour and take an essay portion. Another update that College Board made this past current school year is there are no longer SAT subject tests. So in the past, students could take subject tests for specific subjects. There was a couple math ones, science ones. The SAT, the College Board has moved away from these because the College Board has recognized that students are really busy and they're already taking really advanced, rigorous coursework through advanced placement. So students are able to demonstrate their knowledge and skills and abilities through the advanced placement exams equally as well as they would have with the subject tests. So if a college is looking for specific subject tests in a sense, they use the AP exams now instead of those subject tests that maybe were used prior. Another question we get often is about super scoring. What that means is, say a student received a 500 on the reading test, a 600 on the math test, and then they take it again and they score a 450 on the math or the reading, so they went down a little bit, and then maybe went up to a 610 on the math. So what scores could be sent? Some schools will accept the highest of them. So they'll take the highest of this test, the highest of this test, put them together and call that their super score. It really depends on the institution though. So when students are applying to schools, I always recommend research and see what their policy is. Some institutions, and I will just point out Penn State because that is a popular one here, will not super score. So they will take whatever test score you send, the highest of that together, if that makes sense. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on some updates that will be applicable really to the class of 2025. So just about 2 weeks ago, College Board announced that they will be going fully digital, starting with spring 2024 for the SATs and fall 2023 for the PSATs. So again, really the class of 2025, this will be the first class that will be impacted by this. More information will come out as we get closer, but some of the highlights that College Board has come out with is that this test will be shorter. It's going to be adaptive, so depending on how a student does on a certain module will then impact what questions they'll see next, similar to other standardized tests that are used maybe in the graduate level coursework. Because it will be shorter, there'll be shorter reading passages, less wordy math questions. The calculator will be allowed on the entire math section. Scores will be delivered to students in just days rather than weeks. And I always tell students, when I took the SATs, it was months before you got your score. So they'll have a really quick turnaround on scores. Students will be able to use their own device or request one from College Board if they do not have access to a laptop or Chromebook. And then they are working to address issues like the Wi-Fi dropping or your computer maybe dies during the exam. Their technology is working so that wouldn't be a hindrance to students while they're testing, and the test would pause and then they'd be able to resume once they had Wi-Fi back or their computer was charged again. So just some exciting updates that the College Board has just released like 2 weeks ago. So again, this will not be in effect until the spring 2024 SAT and the fall 2023 PSAT. Make sure that those students that will be impacted by this will have that information as we get closer.
As Mrs. O'Rudman said, the ACT is another test that is taken at all of the schools, and I know she alluded to it. I know it was true when I went to college. ACT was not a test you heard a whole lot about around this area and for colleges on this part of the country. But it's nice that students have a choice because the ACT is a bit different. And I always encourage students, and I believe the other counselors do as well, to either take the practice test, which we'll talk about in just a bit, or to get online and research what some of those questions look like to make a good decision as to which test would be right for them, because they do have some differences. Aside from being administered by a completely different company, the ACT is a curriculum-based achievement test. So what students have told me when they've taken both is that the questioning on the ACT reminds them much more of the questioning that they've seen on the Keystone exam. It is not a reasoning-based test. It is asking them things that they should know from their courses, or asking them things in a way that students tell me is a little bit more straightforward. It is about 3 hours and 25 minutes. There is still an optional writing portion for the ACT. Now, I would research the colleges that the student is interested in to see if they even want the writing portion before sitting through that, if your student is unsure. Sometimes those writing portions are used for different scholarships or different programs, but a lot of times colleges don't necessarily need that writing portion. So that is going to vary by institution, and you can take a look at each college's website and their information and find out whether they require that or recommend it or not. If the student takes the writing portion, it does end up being about 4 hours. Like the SAT, there is a cost to this. It is $60 without an essay, $85 with the essay, but again, like most of our tests, if a student qualifies for free or reduced lunch, we do have fee waivers for that, and they just need to let their counselor know. The big difference between ACT and SAT, aside from the type of questions that it asks, is that ACT has a science section as well. When I talk to my students, and when I have students who've taken both tests, the students who either really excel in science classes, or students who are looking to go into those STEM career fields, the science, the technology, the engineering, the math, a lot of times they like to take the ACT because they feel that it plays more to their strengths. So those 4 tests, the reading, the English, the math, and the science are on the ACT, and then again, there's that optional 40-minute essay section. The ACT is scored completely differently, and sometimes this can be kind of difficult for students and for families to figure out, well, my student took one of each, how do I know which they did better in? There are concordance charts that you can find online. If you just Google it, you'll be able to see, so you could take a look at a student's SAT score and see what the equivalent is in the ACT scoring world, since that one is just out of a 1 to 36. That would give a student a really good idea as to which one they do better on. So they can do that with their practice tests, or I've had students as juniors take both the SAT and the ACT, see which one they did better on, and then take that one test again the fall of their senior year to see if they can improve their score on that. The green sheet that was sitting over there does go over both tests. It gives a lot more information. The front lists all the test dates for this year, it lists how to register, and it lists free practice for both of those tests. There are apps and there are online web practice. On the back of that, it does give a lot more information about each test. One thing that I do like to point out about the ACT test is that the timing is different than on the SAT test, and I think it breaks it down even with that. I always remember the math because in my previous life I was an English teacher, so math is not like my best subject, or the subject that I enjoy the most, I should say. So on the ACT, you will see that there are 60 minutes given for the math section and 60 questions. Even though math was not my strongest subject, I can figure out that I need to bump out 1 question per minute to finish that section. If you look at the equivalent side with the SAT, you will see that you not only get more time, but you have less questions. So some of my students who are very impacted by that time, either they have anxiety about timed tests, or it takes them a little bit longer, they sometimes opt for the test that gives them more time and less questions than the one that doesn't. It is completely up to students and parents and families as to which one the student takes and which one they prefer. Again, I always tell students it's best to take a look, even if you don't take the actual tests, both of them, to look online and maybe do a practice to see which one you feel more comfortable with.
And before I go over college admissions and testing policies, I didn't mention that I'm also the SAT, PSAT coordinator, just as Ms. Miklos is the AP coordinator, and then Ms. Coons is the ACT and pre-ACT coordinator. So we each kind of have an exam that we specialize in and get to organize. Because of my focus on SAT and PSAT, looking at that green sheet, I also just wanted to highlight under the SAT practice, the free practice that's available, Khan Academy is the official practice of the SAT. And if students take a PSAT exam here with us, they can actually connect that exam to Khan Academy and create a personalized study plan. So I've been going over that with my students the last couple of weeks of just saying how great of a resource that is. Not only do they get their test book back that they can use as a study tool, but then Khan Academy will take a look at their score and what questions they got right and wrong, and take out the things they already know and make them focus on the things they need to improve upon. Our students are busy people. They don't have hours upon hours every day to study for these tests, nor should they. So when they do study, it's important that they study smarter, not necessarily longer. So using tools like that personalize it to their strengths and weaknesses is just a really great resource. So all of that being said about SAT and ACT, one thing we really wanted to highlight and mention is that the last 2 years or so with the pandemic, one of the greatest changes we've seen in college admissions is that there's been a huge major shift to test optional. Test optional means it is not mandatory for students to submit their SAT or ACT scores to be part of their application. So when students are looking at colleges, they're building that college list of some target schools and reach schools, safety schools. I encourage my students to research their testing policies. Look on their admissions sections of their websites and see what those schools will require. For our current juniors, I would say probably the next couple weeks, if not now, those admission sites are going to be turning over from our current senior class and really focused on the juniors. So they will make sure that those admission policies will be listed for the class of 2023. So when you're researching individual colleges, learn about their test policy, make sure that you also note there may be some exceptions. We've seen this with major, such as like a nursing program, honors programs, as well as some scholarship qualifications might still require the SAT or ACT. Another word that is kind of a buzzword in the college admissions that students might hear if they're on a college tour or something is test blind. That means that colleges wouldn't allow students to submit scores at all. So some schools that are test optional, it's an option. So if students want to submit them to strengthen their application, that it's available to them. If they choose not to, there may be an alternative, like an essay that's required or something like that. Test blind means that they're not going to look at test scores no matter what. And the last one that I've seen a couple of times more recently is test flexible. So this is an admissions policy that allows applicants to submit other standardized test scores to support their application. So they don't necessitate that it has to be the SAT or ACT. This is where maybe some AP exams could go in place. Or if a student wants to submit their ACT to highlight that science strength as well as maybe an AP biology. So kind of piecemealing things together. So just kind of some policies that we see out there for colleges and universities. So my number one recommendation is just have students do their research. That also applies to some outside scholarships. Some scholarship committees, they still want SATs and ACT scores. Another thing I want to highlight is that when a student takes the SAT or ACT, within a couple weeks of us receiving those scores from students, they are automatically placed on students' transcripts. So if a student is applying somewhere that they are test optional and don't want their college to see their test scores, it's important for those students and parents to reach out to their counselor with a letter or an email stating that they want those scores to be removed from their transcript. When we send the transcript with those test scores, that is not necessarily an official test score. Most colleges and universities want to see the scores directly from College Board and ACT So students need to send those directly from those organizations, and students have the ability to select for colleges or universities when they register for the exam, and for SAT, I know it's up to 9 days after the test, specify which schools they want those scores to be sent to. If students wait to after they get their scores and then say, you know what, now I want these scores sent to these schools, there is a fee. It's $16 per school per test for ACT and $12 for SAT. The last thing, again, I wanted to highlight is that we do have fee waivers available. So if a student receives free reduced lunch, please have them see their school counselor.
So aside from coordinating the ACT and pre-ACT, I also get to coordinate the ASVAB, which stands for the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. For many people, this is the test that you automatically think you take if you're going to go into the military, and that is not incorrect. The military does use it to assign jobs to students who are enlisting. However, over the years, it has also evolved, and it is an excellent test and an excellent tool to give career guidance to students, even if they're not interested in the military. I know as a high school student, a long time ago, I took the ASVAB to kind of see if what I was thinking I wanted to do was something that lined up to what my skills were. So this test is open to students in grades 10 through 12. They can retake the exam. So if they choose to take it as a 10th grader or an 11th grader and then decide to take it again as a senior, they are more than welcome to do that. It is approximately 3 hours long. We give it on a Friday morning, and it covers 9 different subject areas. The cool thing about this test, at least I think it's cool, is that while it does test in some traditional subject areas like general science and word knowledge and mathematics knowledge, it also has tests that are in more non-traditional subjects. So things like assembling objects and auto and shop information and mechanical comprehension. So it really gives a very holistic picture of what skills and what strengths a student may have. And so we do get a lot of students who take it just to see where they kind of fit in. If they're thinking about going into a career, let's say a student tells me, well, I think I want to be, a mechanic or do something in the automotive industry. If they take this test and they're very strong in that subtest, fantastic. If they take that test and they're not so strong in that subject, then we have a conversation basically about, either we can do some things to strengthen those areas, or maybe we want to look at what you were strong in and try to find a way to get that interest and then that strength to marry up in some other career field or related field. This test we give twice a year at the high school. We give it once in November and once in April. This year, the spring test date is April 8th. I will be sending out via email to all students and parents, I do it through Naviance, the link to sign up, and I have it in for March 4th. So you'll be getting that email from me March 4th. It's open for a couple of weeks, and students can just register to take it. This exam is free. You do not pay for this exam. The military actually comes in and administers the exam. They will even tell students, if you have no interest in the military contacting you, don't put down your phone number. And then they won't call you or text you. Which, a lot of kids are like, oh, really? That can do it? Yes, you can do that. Don't put it down. And then, you kind of get out of those calls that you may have remembered from your days. I know I remember them from my days of taking the ASVAB. Approximately 2 to 3 weeks after the test, the recruiter comes back with some friends, and they give back the test scores, and they give back the booklets, and they do an interpretation meeting with the students. For any of you familiar with the Holland Codes for careers, it is much like that, where they go over the students' strengths, their highest areas, and then it matches them up with careers. So the students really get a nice kind of picture on, here's what I was strong in, here's what, maybe I need to practice a little bit more doing, And here are the careers that really match up, and it's not just a field, but sometimes very specific careers that really match up with what my strengths were. So it is a nice way for students to get an idea if they're not sure what they want to do. For our students who are interested in joining the military after high school, this is a perfect way to do it. That way they don't have to try to set up a separate time with their recruiter and take it at a different time. They can take it here. And as Mrs. O'Connor-Redmond said about the SAT and the ACT, it is nice to have that home field advantage where you feel comfortable with the people who are proctoring the test, where you feel comfortable with the room that you're taking it in, you know where things are, you don't have that anxiety about having to drive somewhere else and figure out, the logistics of, let's face it, tonight, parking, and how to get in a door and all those kinds of things. So this is a really nice opportunity for our students as well.
So obviously the theme of tonight is with regard to test taking and the many test taking opportunities that are available to our Warrior students here at Susquehanna High School. But as is the case with the SAT and these policies going test optional, we don't want to overemphasize that students should be taking these tests or that they're a requirement. That said, students and families may want to take opportunities to feel that they're better prepared for these exams. And while there are other alternatives available in the York County area, we as a counseling department can't necessarily endorse them or vouch for their effectiveness. Certainly could go elsewhere to do PSAT or SAT prep or ACT prep, but again, we cannot vouch for them. And as a result of this, within our curriculum, there was a course developed that used to be titled PSAT, SAT prep, now titled Test Prep for Your Future, which is actually aimed at working to help students prepare for the SAT, for the PSAT, for the ACT, and for the ASVAB. With regard to that, one thing I want to mention, again, it's not necessarily a push for testing, but many of you parents may have heard of, for instance, the Keystone exams. With regard to the Keystone exams, a great facet of that is, there's a biology keystone, a literature keystone, and an English keystone. If you have a student who maybe struggles in biology and they struggle in that keystone exam, one of the alternative pathways can come into place for graduation by getting a certain score in the SAT, or a certain score on the ACT, or a certain score on the PSAT. So as Mrs. O'Connor-Rudman alluded to, there's no science section on the SAT. So if your student is strong in that evidence-based reading and writing in that math section, that may be an alternative pathway towards that graduation in struggling with the biology keystone. And that, again, that's one of the reasons kind of why this course was created, to give students opportunities to prepare for all of these exams. With regard for that class, it is a half-credit class that is offered on a pass-fail nature. And so what that means is the student will get a half credit towards graduation, but that class being pass-fail in nature will not have an impact on their grade point average. It's co-taught by a math and an English teacher, since as Mrs. O'Connor-Rudman and Ms. Coons have said, these tests both have math and English sections. Finally, students will receive test prep materials. One thing I very much love about this class is we as counselors will help students with regard to the PSAT if they take that exam, and kind of letting them know how to use the resources. Mrs. O'Connor-Rudman talked about the Khan Academy and linking the account to follow up. We tell all of our sophomores and juniors to do that, whether during scheduling or whenever we see them, in terms of that's an excellent resource. During that test prep class, for students who are looking to take the PSAT, that is something that is widely emphasized, and in addition to having that conversation with with their counselor, teachers discuss that and walk them through that and show them how to utilize the Khan Academy before and after taking the PSAT, the ACT, or the SAT. With regard to the PSAT, that is an exam that is offered as kind of a preliminary SAT exam. And so again, students have the option to take this test both in 10th and 11th grade. Traditionally, prior to the shift to test optional policies, it is an exam that I can't speak for the other counselors, but I know I would traditionally recommend my students take that in 10th and 11th grade, although that typically may not happen. But the reason for that recommendation in 10th and 11th grade would be the practice in 10th grade, and then in 11th grade, students may be eligible for National Merit Scholarship consideration, or National Merit Scholar consideration, depending on their score and where it falls within a range that given year. Only 11th grade students are eligible for National Merit Scholar consideration, which would be a reason to take it in 10th and 11th grade, utilizing that practice to follow up in 11th grade. And National Merit Scholarship and National Merit Scholar consideration, I go back to what Mrs. Miklos said with the AP Capstone Diploma. That's also something that's very prestigious that could help you in terms of getting accepted to certain colleges. Or in one case, one of my students a couple of years ago got finalist status in a school that was never on her radar during our 4 years of conversation. She ultimately ended up going there because she got a full ride based on getting National Merit Scholarship finalist status. And again, our our Test Prep for Your Future class is a course that students can take in 10th, 11th, or even 12th grade to help prepare them for these exams, whether it's the PSAT, the SAT, the ACT, or the ASVAB, because again, those may tie into alternative means for graduation. Just to put in a plug-in on Ms. Kuhn's behalf, while you may traditionally hear the PSAT often, because again, it is something we recommend students take in 10th and 11th grade, the pre-ACT is something that is coming up very soon. You should have received an email from Ms. Kuhn's a couple of weeks ago.
Just today, this afternoon.
And a few hours ago, she sent out a follow-up email. The pre-ACT is exclusive to 10th grade students. So if you have a sophomore, this is the only time they will be eligible to take this test. We talk about practice and kind of understanding the difference between these tests. The pre-ACT is an excellent opportunity to do that, especially if your 10th grade student has taken a PSAT, to see the difference in terms of how those tests are structured and maybe help them make a determination if testing is something they feel they need or want to do as a junior. Maybe taking both the PSAT and the pre-ACT can help them make that determination for SAT versus ACT. The registration for the pre-ACT is due by this Friday, and the test will be offered here at Susquehanna High School on March 8th, 2022. Again, one of the other great things about the pre-ACT, very similar to that ASVAB exam, is it does kind of have a career exploration facet to it, where it will offer assistance with career clusters and pathways. As many of you know, our 10th grade students take Career Seminar, so this is an excellent test to take to also kind of facilitate some of those results from Career Seminar. So if you have a student who maybe is still kind of trying to figure out what they want to do or what they're skilled or talented at that relates to a career, this may be another excellent exam for them to take. And again, our Test Prep for Your Future class does try to help them with preparation for that exam. Finally, as she mentioned, there's the ASVAB, and again, our Test Prep for Your Future class does have facets of helping students practice and prepare for the ASVAB exam. Are there any questions?